All right, so let's go ahead and start the material for the course. In this section, we're going to talk about an introduction to whole numbers. This presentation is divided into 3 parts. There's going to be 3 main things that we're going to look at. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is place value. So first off, before we break down larger numbers, let's just talk about what numbers are. We're going to be looking at whole numbers in this module. So what are whole numbers? Whole numbers are the set of numbers that include the natural, or sometimes called the counting numbers, and 0. They do not include negative numbers, decimals, or fractions to start off with. As you progress through math, this list will get longer. So let's just go ahead and look at some examples and talk about whether they are whole numbers or not. If we look at the number 75, I want to know, is this a whole number? This is a whole number. It is positive. It is not a negative number. It's not a fraction. It's not a decimal. It's a counting number. By counting numbers, I mean, what do we do when we count? We start at 1, 2, 3, and we keep going. So this is going to be on that list. -4. Is it a whole number? And the answer is no. We actually call it an integer, which we'll be looking at in the next module. Integers include the positive and the negatives. The important thing is that this is not considered a whole number because it does have a negative in the front. 0, is it a whole number? Yes, this is the one thing that makes the whole numbers different from the natural numbers. The natural numbers are the counting numbers. Counting, you start at 1. Well, the whole numbers, we add just one number to it, which is 0. So this is going to be a whole number. 1.5, is this a whole number? And the answer is no. It is not a whole number because it is a decimal. What we actually refer to it as is it is known as a rational number. 5/8, is 5/8 a whole number? The answer is no. It's a fraction, or later on we will refer to it as a rational number. 300, is 300 a natural number? Is 300 a whole number? Yes, it is. It's a little bit large, but it is a whole number. It is not negative, it's not a fraction, and it's not a decimal. 0.6 with a bar on top, this is not a whole number. We will look at these later when we talk about decimals, but this is known as a rational number. Now, quick question, do you guys know what it means when there is a bar on top of a number in a decimal? What this means is this is called a repeating decimal, meaning that it goes on forever and ever. It's 0.66666666666, and you keep saying 6 until you die, and then you leave it to someone else in your will to continue on forever. But more importantly, it is not a whole number. 7.5, is this a whole number? The answer is no. This is a rational number, but another thing that we refer to it as is it is a mixed number. We'll be studying these later this semester as well. 2, is it a whole number? Yes, it is. And so now hopefully you have a better understanding of what whole numbers look like. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of this section. In this section, we want to talk about the place value system. So whole numbers Every whole number is the combination of two basic pieces of information. We have digits. These are the numbers that we actually write on the paper. These are the numbers that appear in each column. The digits that we work with are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, or 0 through 9. Those are the actual numbers that we write on the paper. The other thing we have is column value. This is the value of the column. So there are three basic columns. We have the hundreds, the tens, and the ones. So to identify a number, we combine each digit with its column value and add the results. So for instance, if we have a 9 in the middle column, we multiply 9 times 10, and it becomes a 90. So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify the column value of a number of a digit in a basic number. So 2, I want to know what is the column value for this. 2 is in the ones column. Since it is in the right column, it is in the ones column. Let me go ahead and just make that visible up there again. 1. Actually, let's change this to a 7. 7 is in the tens column. The last one, 425. 4 is in the hundreds column. Okay, so hopefully that's pretty easy. So now we want to go ahead and extend the concept, because you're probably sitting there saying, but there are numbers that are larger than 3 digits. And so we're going to go ahead and take this first basic concept and extend it. So extending the concept to larger numbers. Not only do we have digits and column value, we also have something called a period. A period in math is a group of 3 digits that are going to be separated by a comma. Please note that the leftmost period may have less than 3 digits. We'll see some examples of this later. So we have period names. Starting on the right and moving to the left, we have the ones period. Ones, I am putting it in parentheses only because we don't say it. We also have the thousands period, millions, billions, and trillions. Inside each period, we said there were 3 digits. You have the same column values as we saw in the last slide. You still have hundreds, tens, and ones. So when we look at this, we actually have 100 trillion, 10 trillion, trillion, 100 billion, 10 billion, 1 billion, 100 million, 10 million, million, 100,000, 10,000, thousand, and then you have the 100, 10, and 1. Trying to memorize all of those place values is a little bit, well, it's a bit of a tongue twister, first off. But if you notice, there's some repetition going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine the 2 pieces of information, the ones that we saw from the last slide, as well as the period name, in order to identify the column value of any digit. So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify the number's place value inside the period using 100, 10, or ones. Again, I'm going to put ones in parentheses just because for the larger column values, you don't have to say 1 million. You can just say million. And then we want to identify the period name. Now, if it is in the ones period, you're just going to do step 1 because we don't say it's in the 100 ones column. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and try some examples, see what we can do. All right, so we want to identify the place value of the 8 in each number. So for example A, if we look at the 8, notice that this is in the right column. So we have 100, 10, 1. Remember that we don't say 1, we just need to go ahead and put in the period name. So what period is this in? This is in the thousands. And so the 8 is in the thousands column. All right, for example B, we have 800,503,622. We'll get about reading them in a few minutes. So let's look at the 8. The 8 is in the leftmost column. So the first thing I want to know, is it a 100, a 10, or a 1? This is 100. The next thing I need is the period name. So if you want, you may want to get in the habit of writing the period abbreviations up at the top. This is in the 100 millions. It's in the millions period. And so the column value of the 8 is 100 million. All right, let's look at example C. We have the 8. It is in the rightmost column, so I'm not going to put the 1. It's in the ones column, but I'm not going to put it. Instead, I just want the period name. So again, I'm going to go ahead and put my little abbreviations up at the top. We have 1,000, million, billion. So this is in the billions column. All right, let's look at example D. We have an 8. So this is in the middle column. So this is in the 100, the 10. So the first thing I'm going to do is put 10. And then I want to know what period is it in. Well, we have 1,000, million. So this is in the 10 thousands column. All right, example E, we have the 8. This is in the leftmost column of the period. So this is going to be 100. And then the period name, we have 1,000 million. So this is in the 100 thousands column. All right, last one. We have the 8. This is in the middle column, so this is going to be a 10 something. And then, especially when we get to these larger numbers, I have a hard time keeping track. My eyes have a tendency to kind of cross. And so I'm going to put my key up at the top. Remember, we have 1,000, million, billion, trillion. And so this is in the 10 trillions column. All right, so that takes care of place value. Now, we will need this as we progress through the semester. One of the main areas that it comes up is when we talk about rounding numbers. Rounding numbers will be told round to the nearest 10,000, round to the nearest million, round to the nearest thousand. And we'll continue this when we talk about decimals. But that's going to be the main thing that we're going to see when we talk about place value, when we talk about column value, is when we look at rounding. So you will need to know this later on. Okay, that takes care of this section. go ahead, take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about reading and writing numbers.